Let's get right into it. Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking the recent financial results from Zen Technologies. Specifically, we're looking at their Q4 and FY26 investor presentation. And let me tell you, this is a perfect case study in how financial headlines can sometimes be completely deceiving. I mean, if you just glance at the surface-level numbers, you'd probably think, oh, this company is in a serious slump. But as we're going to uncover today, what looks like a step backward, it might actually be a massive, calculated leap forward.
Okay, let's dive into this and address the elephant in the room. Why did a top defense company see its revenue drop in 2026? Think about it. We are literally in the middle of a global boom in the defense sector. The demand is through the roof, yet Zen's top-line performance looked, well, pretty muted compared to what a lot of observers were expecting from such a key industry player.
To put a hard number on it, their total sales revenue for FY26 landed at 687.69 crore rupees. Now, obviously, that is still a substantial chunk of change by any normal metric, but for them, it actually represents a really noticeable step down from their previous heights.
When you line up the figures year over year, the picture gets pretty stark. Back in FY25, Zen's revenue was a robust 973.64 crore, delivering a solid profit after tax of roughly 280 crore. Fast forward just 1 year to FY26, and revenue shrinks to 687.69 crore, bringing profits down to about 193 crore. That is an undeniable, heavy drop. So what exactly is going on here? With a haircut like that, why aren't investors and stakeholders totally panicking?
Well, the answer comes straight from the company management's own commentary, and honestly, it's fascinating. They stated plainly, what the headline numbers do not capture is the structural transformation that took place over the last 2 years. They're basically giving us the cheat code right here. Don't just fixate on the top-line revenue decline. You really have to look at the massive metamorphosis that's been bubbling underneath the surface.
Which brings us to our first main point, a strategic defense transformation.
The reality we're dealing with here is that FY26 wasn't a downturn at all. Actually, scratch that. It was more like a highly calculated cocoon phase. Zen Technologies deliberately used this time to fundamentally reshape what they do, what they build, and how they serve the armed forces. We're talking about a complete shift from the old Zen, which was primarily known in the industry for its focus on training simulators, to the new Zen, a rapidly emerging, comprehensive, combat-ready defense force. By the time the books closed on FY26, they had totally leveled up their operational focus. Now, what's really interesting about this newly expanded lineup is how distinct it is. Zen ended FY26 ready to offer the armed forces 5 core capabilities. They've still got their legacy training simulation and systems, of course, but now they've added counter-drone solutions, automated weapon stations, combat robotics, and actual physical drones. This isn't just a small pivot, it's a massive expansion from training software into active, deployed, real-world battlefield tech.
And we're not just talking about concepts on spreadsheets or fancy boardroom pitches here. We are talking about tangible, real-world battlefield hardware, specifically their combat robotics and automated weapon stations. They're actively out there building and validating the real deal, metal and circuits.
Moving on to our next piece of the puzzle, building the combat ecosystem.
Because here's the thing, you don't just wake up one morning and suddenly start building automated weapons and combat drones out of thin air, right? You have to acquire those capabilities through really deliberate investment. Taking a peek at their subsidiary roadmap reveals some major strategic stakes, like holding 51% of Unistring Tech Solutions, 100% of Ares Simulation, and just over 45% of Air of Robotics. Management explicitly called out in their FY26 commentary that the financial contribution from these subsidiaries totally validates their long-term capital allocation. It's this exact network of companies that collectively gives Zen the muscle to compete across a way wider set of defense opportunities today.
And you can see a couple of the highly specialized arms making all this happen. Unistring Tech Solutions, or UTS, and Air of Robotics. These distinct entities are essentially serving as the specialized engineering engines that are actively driving Zen's next-generation robotics and layered defense tech.
That sets us up perfectly for our next area of focus, market and policy tailwinds.
You see, Zen's transformation into a broader, more lethal defense company absolutely isn't happening in a vacuum. It aligns perfectly with external demand drivers in the current global and domestic climate. Domestically, you've got things like the Draft Defense Acquisition Procedure 2026 and the ongoing policy push towards Buy Indian IDDM to really boost local defense manufacturing. Globally, the company notes that shifting tactical needs, amplified by recent global conflicts like the Iran war, are heavily influencing the demand for this exact type of hardware.
Management summarized this perfectly, saying global events have underlined the strategic importance of layered counter-UAS systems and trained, combat-ready forces. And remember, Zen has spent 3 decades heavily focused on R&D to validate these exact types of real-world battlefield products. That gives them an absolutely massive head start over a lot of the other indigenous offerings that are just now trying to scramble into the market.
And that brings us to the climax of this whole situation, the FY27 springboard. So all this quiet restructuring, the decades of R&D, these massive policy tailwinds, it's all culminating in a huge financial payoff. So the crucial point is that FY26 was essentially a period of deferred gratification. The company stated really clearly that order conversion timing was just delayed beyond what they originally expected. The orders didn't just vanish into thin air. They just got pushed back a bit. And that delay, it's exactly what is setting up FY27 for a period of massive operational execution. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality on the ground. In the final quarter of FY26 alone, Zen's recognized revenue was roughly 178 crores. Yet, their new order inflow for that exact same quarter was a staggering 431 crore. I mean, the new orders are absolutely pouring in, heavily eclipsing the actual recognized revenue for that period.
When you add all of that up, it brings their total consolidated order book to an incredible 1,336 crore rupees. Just let that number sink in for a second. 1,336 crore just waiting in the wings. And the absolute best part for anyone watching this company? Management explicitly notes that the vast majority of this massive order book is scheduled to be executed right now in FY27.
Honestly, with all that in mind, it's no wonder the company confidently states, "We believe Zen is entering FY27 better positioned than at any point in our recent history." When you combine an expanded product portfolio, one that's evolved all the way from basic simulation to active combat hardware, with a structurally diversified earnings base built through those strategic subsidiaries, plus this massive deferred order book, their foundation looks incredibly strong.
Which leaves us with one final, super compelling question to consider. With a structural pivot totally complete, a diversified tech ecosystem actively built out, and a historic 1,336 crore in orders just waiting to be executed, is the broader market underestimating the new Zen Technologies? It is definitely going to be a fascinating situation to watch unfold over the next year. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this really helped clear up the whole FY26 illusion. And as always, remember to look beyond the headline numbers.